We are meeting after a while, so just to recapitulate the journey of life that Aurobindo has traced for us and which we trace in return. So the journey of life begins with the descent of life itself. Life, as Aurobindo has said, is one of the four powers which have come down into the darkness to transform it into its own divine equivalent. But having come here, it finds itself tied down to the very thing it has come to change and transform. The result is that life upon earth and creation experiences a kind of struggle, a tussle between the pressure to change and transform and the resistance that wants to maintain a status quo or to bring down creation back again to the inconscient from which it has arisen. In this process of evolution, we have spoken about the three levels through which evolution moves. The first being the state of tamas, in which everything is obscure, dull, inert. There is no seeking, no conscious seeking at least, though Aurobindo tells us that there is a seeking in matter itself, but not that matter is conscious of that. It's a state of utter tamas, of darkness, of inertia, where there is a silence which is pregnant with many, many possibilities. Out of tamas, creation or life itself touches the rajasic mode, and in the rajasic mode there is restless, hectic activity, a seeking but too obscure. There is a seeking in life at the level of rajas. This seeking takes a very intense form, but it doesn't know what it's really seeking. This is the animal creation, full of kinesis, full of movement, full of strength, energy, but with no apparent direction and goal save to preserve its little existence or fragmentary existence upon a little earth. Then creation enters into the sattvic mode. Reason comes, mind comes, it tries to analyze, weigh, tries to find an ideal code, law of life, tries to govern life itself on the basis of an ideal ethic or some rules. And with that comes the advent of the mental man. These are the three modes which we all have experienced. The thing is that with each coming new creation, if one may use the word, or a new range or scale or degree or a new mode of functioning, the old is not abolished. It continues to be there, and a new balance has to be found between the old and the new. So when life enters matter, there is a big problem of harmonizing the inertia of matter with the intense kinesis of life. And Aurobindo so beautifully says, it's really such a hope, because often we wonder how can the supramental creation be. Aurobindo points out in the Life Divine on the very first chapter that nature has already created a difficult task of harmonizing life which is full of kinesis and movement with matter which is full of inertia. It's one of the most wonderful examples of transformations, if one may use the word, in a more general sense, that has taken place in way back, in far past. It has also harmonized to an extent the thinking man, which wants to find an ideal rule, an ideal movement, a way of living, with the restless urge of life to just move and flow where it listeth, wherever it wants to blow. Life doesn't like to be checked. It's its very nature to flow incessantly. Even when we think we are asleep, life doesn't stop. Thankfully, of course. Otherwise, it would be so frightening if with the body sleep life stops. Life continues to move. It is its nature to move. Even in matter, life is there concealed, and it gives to the atoms the movement, what the scientists call as a kinetic energy, and it doesn't cease. And so also with the thinking man. Thus far evolution has carried us, and this completes the circle of the lower creation, out of which Aurobindo now says the time has come for the new creation. This journey begins, or the spiritual impulse awakens in man, when he is no more content with this little frame in which he lives, and he begins to seek for something beyond, something higher. This something beyond, something higher may take various forms. In traditional religion, it has taken the form of a seeking for God. It may take the seeking for an ideal way to live, an ideal simply that exists, which one wants to see established on earth. It can take the form just of a thirst, a need, which one cannot define. The mother puts so beautifully in one of her short passages. She says, if you have this thirst, it does not matter where you are and what you are doing. Even the waywardness of an extravagances of an American youth are a path, if you have this thirst. So this thirst, which one cannot define, cannot describe, but it's not the obscurity of the life impulse in an animal. There is a very conscious seeking. And the mother says this conscious seeking may take one of the two forms, sometimes both together. One is that one is not satisfied with the way life is, with the way world is, and one wants things to be better and things to change. And the other is, it takes a more conscious and a positive form, is seeking for something which is positively beautiful, positively true, the good with a capital G, or a self with a capital S, something which is permanent, something which is eternal, amidst this transient flux and flow of life. Depending upon the seeking, at first it's a partial seeking and a partial movement. One has one kind of experience or the other. For instance, Aurobindo would tell us at great length towards the last 6 chapters of the Life Divine, that if the seeking is through the mind has a tendency to lean toward the impersonal, and it can vanish itself in the impersonality of existence. Or else, if the mind leans towards the personal side, or else if the seeking is in the heart, then it ends up discovering this impersonality, a throb with a conscious fount of love, a source of infinite sweetness and joy, a giver of boons, a conscious being of the divine. Or this seeking may take the impulse of the will in life, and it may end up discovering that behind all the movements and motions of nature, behind all the actions and activities and works, there is the master seated within it who governs and informs and sustains all existence and moves it by his single will. In traditional paths, so far, we have been satisfied with one or the other type of experiences. Those who have sought the divine through the mind have been very happy to rediscover his impersonality and declare that this world is nothing but a shadow. All the movements, all the activities, all the forms and figures are nothing but figments of some imagination which some cosmic dreamer has dreamed. And the only sane thing to do is to enter into the impersonality and lose oneself. The Bhakta, on the other hand, mocks at it, because he has discovered that there is the divine lover who is with him throughout, everywhere in this existence, and not only he is there as a passive presence, but intervenes time and again to pull him out of the darkness, intervenes in moments of his crisis, gives him solace when he needs, and informs him with courage, hope, and fills his heart with sweetness and love and bliss. So these have been so far the early attempts of man towards spiritual life. But as happens, with each limit, human beings have paused and thought that to be the ultimate. And schools of thought, philosophies, cults, ways of yoga have entered into the human arena as a result of these partial experiences. Now, Aurobindo says all these partial experiences are only some aspect, one or the other aspect of an infinite who escapes all these experiences and is there in all of them. So the time has come for man to go beyond mere the spiritual experiences to a yet higher state. From the little circle of nature, we must escape into the infinity of the divine embrace. This is the new creation. But this new creation cannot establish itself all of a sudden. It is there at work, as the mother has told us, that the new creation is at work and it is laying down the base, the foundations, and building it. But what is necessary from our side, as we have been reading in the last few classes, is the need of the psychic being to come out and step out from the depths of nature. He is hidden there like Shivlingam in the Amarnath. And it's a very interesting symbol because, to go to Amarnath Yatra, you have to take a very arduous and tortuous journey. And when you come there, then you have to go through a very small, narrow cave. Only one person can go and he has to really bow his head and go. You cannot go and have the darshan of that Jyotirling inside Amarnath cave if you want to hold your head high. It's a very symbolic journey. So you are alone, you bow down your head in all humility and you see that marvel. So far, the discovery of the psychic being has been like that. And you have the vision and the glimpse and come back enthused and rejuvenated. But that is not enough. For this yoga, Aurobindo tells us, earth must transform itself and equal heaven. But for this high spiritual change to be, the heavenly psyche must put off her veil and step into common nature's crowded rooms. So we have this new thing happening in today's age, that the Shivlingam has melted. Now, of course, it's in one way it's a bad sign, but I take it as a good omen that the Shivlingam has melted and the Shiva, that symbol, the psychic impulse, is becoming more and more diffused into the whole race. It's time that that psychic being is brought out into the open and it must start working into this little office of earthly life. This is a crucial movement of yoga, as we have been reading, because this yoga really begins when, with great care and effort and above all a special act of grace, we are able to separate the psychic being from the rest of nature. And when we can say with certitude that this is me, the mother says so long as there is a question that what is the psychic being and where is it, it means we have not yet found it. There is a very beautiful little story of Swami Ramtirth. I think it is relating to Swami Ramtirth, almost 99%. When he was asked after a 1-hour talk he gave, and he was asked by the people there that, so Swami, you are saying that you have a soul? He says, no, I am not saying that I have a soul. I am saying that I am a soul and I have a body. So it's a reversal of consciousness. And when we have that, many maladies just drop off. For instance, this fear that all the time grips man, that something is going to happen, the fear of death, the fear of the ominous. The mother says, the moment you touch it, you know that you are immortal. You know that you have always existed in the past and you would always exist in the future. One knows that one has changed these formations so many times, and it doesn't matter if one has to change it few more times, even a few more centuries. So when people used to ask, of course, mother has replied in different ways, but there is a very sweet and beautiful way when someone asks the mother how much time it will take for the supramental realization, because sometimes people feel very frustrated that it's not going to take place in my lifetime, as if this is the only lifetime. So mother says, my child, why do you care? Why do you worry? If it takes long, we will have so many more lives to serve him. So beautiful way to look at it. that if it takes 1,000 years, 10,000 years, 1,000,000 years, that's the joy of service we will get for 1,000, 10,000, and 1,000,000 years. And it makes life so simple and so beautiful, because that is the touch of the psychic. It knows the divine because it feels the divine. It does not think, analyze, calculate. Even if the whole universe says there is no divine, the psychic cannot be deceived by these appearances. It knows the divine and it feels the divine and it lives for the sake of the divine. So this is the crucial change, but this is only the beginning of a new ascent. It is not the end of the story, because now it must work in the nature. So far, one reason why the psychic being has not stepped out, there are many reasons, of course. One of them is that human beings have to go through a process of individualization, which we have spoken of earlier. And through that itself is an indication that the psychic consciousness is becoming more and more crystallized and forming into a concrete psychic being. But that apart, imagine a most beautiful princess who has lived right from the birth into the palaces, has to suddenly go into a place which is absolutely horrible and dirty. What would it do? It would either run away or would want to change. You cannot say that you just sleep, doesn't matter how the bed is, doesn't matter how the doors and windows are closed, though our Divine Mother has done precisely that. When she came, one of the rooms where she stayed was absolutely dark and horrible. It is just a symbol of the consciousness in which she has descended. The same we see in that play, Dimitri and Persephone, that how the Divine Mother enters into this creation and comes to change. In one of her, one of those moods, she says that my child, if I was born in India, I would have changed many things. If one can imagine. There is a line in Savitri which describes it so well. In her, there was the anguish of the gods. So the moment the psychic being awakens, it feels the anguish of the gods. It constantly has dreamt of that ideal of beauty, of that love, that good, that truth, and it wants to establish here. But in nature, everything contradicts. And that's what last couple of times we were reading, the difficulties which it finds in the vital nature, in the mental nature, in the physical nature. In the traditional yoga, because the stress is not on transformation, therefore there is not much talk about rejection. It is enough that the nature takes a sattvic turn. It is enough if you earn an honest living, if you don't cheat another person, and you can lead a life according to the sattvic ego. Because the goal is to make the ego supple enough to nature supple enough for the psychic being to come out and escape. But in this yoga, since the goal is transformation, therefore each and every weed of nature has to be plucked out. Otherwise, when the new creation descends, it will smash it into pieces. In one of the very early writings in Bande Matram, Aurobindo says, imagine what would happen to a human being if he picked up the Gada of Bhim. Of course, everybody likes to pick up. That is why you have this ancient, it's a very interesting symbol in both Krishna's life and Rama's life. In Krishna's life, Kansa has arranged a very ingenious test. And the test is, at the door, he has placed a bow, a giant bow. And people will come and go, but only the divine incarnate is capable of lifting it in a trice and breaking it. The same ingenious test is arranged by King Janak, that the only way he can understand that who is the divine incarnate is he would be able to pick the bow and put the thread and break it. Of course, he didn't want to break it, but it breaks, which again is a very interesting symbol. So this is how nature has to be prepared, because unless the nature is ready, so a lot of experiences of life, which we term as bad, unfortunate, painful, if we look at it from another angle, are simply a preparation. We cannot lift the giant bow straight away, because otherwise it will break on our own heads. So we are taught to lift small bows, little, till we become strong and ready to bear the honorush of God. And till that happens, the nature has to be worked upon by the psychic being, and a basic psychic purification, a basic psychicization of nature is the necessity. Having done that, Then starts the next process. The mother wants the new creation. So far, we have lived in the old creation, and the old creation we know is built on the foundations of inconscience. Now, when the foundation is of inconscience, it has a tendency to constantly collapse, because there is a dull gravitation constantly pulling. That's why even our highest flights are like clipped, or as if we are flying, but the kite flies and the pull is constantly in the hands of the person who is holding the kite through the thread. So even in our highest flights, even in our deepest meditation, we feel constantly the pull downwards. This is because the old creation is built on the foundation of inconscience. And that's why the mother says, unless this base changes, nothing permanently can be established. We may have all the beautiful experiences, but they will evaporate, because the base is anomalous, the base is ambiguous, the base is dark, the base is inert. Therefore, we have the beautiful experience of the supramental descent, entering into the darkness of inconscience and changing it from below. And we have the very first line in the mother, that a call from below and a pressure from above together. So this has gone into the very base and is changing things right from the bottom. This is the way the new creation takes place. But from our side, the best foundation one can lay is the foundation of equanimity. If the foundation of equanimity is laid, then the new creation can be built very beautifully. And this new creation is built on pillars. Right now, the walls of our house are built of anger, left wall, lust, right wall, fear, the wall in front, doubt, the roof above. So it's a very small and petty creation. It's very difficult for the psychic being to live in this kind of house. No wonder, till now, the urge of every developed human being, or most developed human beings, when they turn to spiritual life, is to escape, because they see the horror and the nightmare. And this has been taken as a great virtue even. Aurobindo, when he talks of renunciation in the synthesis, he says, how far will our renunciation go? So he says, some people believe that renunciation is the end and not just a means. And they believe that one must end up renouncing the world itself. And then he says a very powerful passage. He says, if the world is a darkness, all the more that there must be in this world givers of light and hope and courage. If it is a field of death, all the more reason that the children of immortality must thrust themselves into this world and create something of beauty and permanence here. So this is the stage in which evolution is taking place, and once this basic field is clear, then the higher worlds can descend and take hold of earthly life. But this process can start much earlier, and after the basic groundwork is laid, the groundwork of equality, the pillars of faith, the pillar of rejection or renunciation, of sacrifice, of aspiration, has been built in place of anger and fear, etc. And at the center of it, instead of ego and falsehood, which is described in so beautifully in Savitri, that what is the central point of the world of darkness? Ego is in the center, and falsehood sits by its side as mate and queen. So instead of that, we should have the divine seated in the center, and love and courage, or love and truth, as the guardian angels by the side. So once this scheme is there, then the next process starts, and this process is the process of spiritualization. This process of spiritualization, because there is nothing in the old creation by which we can really build the new creation. It is built of a totally new stuff. That's why there is a very small, very interesting anecdote. When someone went to meet Anandamayi Ma, he sent in a little card. In the visiting card, he wrote MBBS, MD, DM, DLit, PhD, etc., etc. People like, and all the degrees. So the person who took the card inside said, Mother, some Vidwan has come to meet you, because it's so difficult to read all these degrees. So she made a very beautiful reply. She said, अविद्या की नगरी में विद्वान कहाँ से आ गया? This whole city is built of ignorance. Where is this Vidwan? Because in the original sense, avidya is not illiteracy. An illiterate may be great Vidwan. And a man who is very, very educated and is very respected in the literary circles may be fully steeped in avidya. Avidya is to live in and by the multiplicity. That is ignorance. And vidya is to live in, by, and for the oneness. So beautifully Mother says in one of her prayers, to live and act in this world while seeing only oneness. And that is the secret. Even in the Ish Upanishad it's given so beautifully, that there are beings who live only in avidya, like us in the old creation, live only in multiplicity. We are only seeing appearances. And the Ish Upanishad says they go into a darkness. Then there are those great yogis sitting in Himalayan peaks who live only in Vidya. They have discarded this world as a useless, worn out robe. And the Ish Upanishad says they go into a greater darkness. So what is the way out? It says, Vidyanch, avidyanch, yast dvedo bhayam saha. To live in the Vidya and yet act in the world of multiplicity. That is the beauty and that is the secret we are here to learn. That's why Aurobindo says the Ish Upanishad is the foundation of the divine life. If one really grasps it beautifully, one has a very beautiful foundation for the life divine which he has come to establish. So once this base is laid, the first minister who must step out is the psychic being. As we have read, if that doesn't step out, the difficulties of nature can play havoc. And above all, the greatest difficulty hides in the subconscious, which is the very shadow thrown out by the luminous sphere. And these difficulties can really lead one very far from the path. So the only safety is if the psychic being has stepped out and is awakened. And once that happens, then starts the process of coming down of the elements of the new consciousness with which the house of the spirit and the new creation has to be built. The house of the spirit is already built by that, and the new creation has to be built by those elements which the mother will give us. They are not found in the lower creation. So what are these new elements which constitute the higher consciousness? Aurobindo tells us force, light, knowledge, ananda. Elsewhere he speaks of peace, wideness, light or knowledge and ananda. These are the elements of the new creation. So simple, so basic. So if the old creation was built by restless agitation and anxiety, the new creation will be built by peace. The old creation was built by the stress of suffering with transient satisfactions. As Aurobindo tells us in the Life Divine, in the old creation there was a thrill of pleasure and pain and indifference. But the new creation will be built by ananda. The old creation was built by division and ignorance. The new creation will be built by knowledge and light. The old creation was small and narrow. We lived in the small circle of the ego. And those who were linked to us by the egoistic life, they were our own. But the new creation will be built on the basis of wideness and a progressive wideness melting into the infinity of the divine embrace. So here Aurobindo tells us this psychic opening through the heart puts in primarily into connection with the individual divine. The divine in his inner relation with us. It is especially the source of love and bhakti. This is the first change. This upward opening puts us into direct relation with the whole divine and can create in us the divine consciousness and a new birth or births of the spirit. So births of the spirit. In this yoga, just like the ancient Vedic rishis, there are peaks after peaks that one climbs, and Aurobindo does not let us rest. There is a very beautiful little poem where he says, hill after hill was climbed and now behold the last tremendous brow. A step and all is sky and God. So, like the ancient rishis, one climbs from one layer to another layer. There is no turning back, there is no resting, there is no pension scheme here that one has reached so much, now one can rest and say, very good, I have had nice spiritual experiences and I can capitalize on that pension. So, this is the beauty of this yoga and this path, that one keeps moving. So first thing Sri Aurobindo says, which of these first elements should be established in the consciousness? He says peace. When the peace is established, this higher or divine force from above can descend and work in us. It descends usually first into the head and liberates the inner mind centers, then into the heart center, and liberates fully the psychic and emotional being, then into the navel and other vital centers and liberates the inner vital, and then into the Muladhara and below and liberates the inner physical being. So this is the process of liberation. So as it descends into the mind, the field of thought and understanding becomes clear of all the weeds that are surrounding it. All the little thoughts, the doubts, the anxieties which constantly come crowding up as thought, as the peace enters, it liberates the mind from these influences. As it enters the heart, there is a very powerful description in Savitri, which maybe we'll read next time, where step by step Sri Aurobindo describes how this, when this higher consciousness descends, the emotional being and its turbulent attachments, passions, ignorant attachment to appearances, it liberates us from that. Then as it enters into the navel, from the vital restlessness, which is the source of so much trouble, even of disease, that it liberates us from that. And when it touches the very physical, rock bottom and even below, it liberates the physical being from all the restlessness, from the inertia, from all its difficulties and problems, obscurities. So this is the first thing. It works at the same time for perfection as well as liberation. Mukti, Shanti is the first condition for Siddhi and Bhukti, as Sri Aurobindo puts it in the synthesis. It takes up the whole nature, part by part, and deals with it, rejecting what has to be rejected, sublimating what has to be sublimated, creating what has to be created. It is that which does it. So beautiful. When the peace comes down, automatically many things which were very tasty and nice, one develops a distaste for them. This is very, I think this story we have sometimes recounted, that when Vibhishna comes to Ayodhya and all the monkeys are very unhappy about it, because they say he's after all a Rakshasa and you can't trust him because he's a non-vegetarian. And in Ayodhya there is not a single non-vegetarian restaurant. So this fellow will come and eat all the monkeys. So monkeys are very scared. So Rama assures them, don't worry, he has come into my zone, I'll take care of it. So, but Vibhishna is Vibhishna, he can't, after some time the Rakshasi nature comes out. Despite everything, nature doesn't change so easily. So he's looking for a non-veg restaurant, he doesn't find. Finally he goes, picks up a little hare and eats it. Now the monkeys are always on the prowl. They come and tell Rama that, look, we told you, you didn't listen. So Rama says, just hold on, wait for some more time. After a few months, Vibhishna feels the urge again. But next time when he eats it, he doesn't find it tasty. And a third time, and a fourth time. And the last time when he eats it, he vomits out. And he realizes that this non-veg, why do people eat it? So similarly, when we look back upon our life, we discover, why were we at all engaged with such nonsensical things? And we took great joy in them. So here Sri Aurobindo is saying, as this higher consciousness descends, especially this peace, it's a powerful peace, not a peace of inertia. So long as we dwell in that peace, certain things become impossible and certain things spontaneously are rejected from the nature. It integrates, harmonizes, establishes a new rhythm in the nature. It can bring down to a higher and yet higher force and range of the higher nature until, if that be the aim of the sadhana, it becomes possible to bring down the supramental force and existence. It even changes the rhythm, the very pattern of life. One would sleep very late otherwise, but suddenly when peace descends, By 8:30 one begins to feel like dozing off. Certain things of a very rajasic nature which one ate and enjoyed, all these samosas and kachoris and the chaat, they just drop off from nature simply because this peace is established and it won't let us enjoy those things which at one time we enjoyed. So this is how it works to change the very rhythm and pattern of nature. This is very different from the mental coercion. Mental coercion is based on certain rules and principle. They bring rigidity in nature. They bring even a feeling of superiority. When people do it by the mind, they become great Puritans, vegans. That is not the case here. Vegans have to all the time struggle with their own nature. And when they see others who are, still indulging, they feel a very sense of Puritanism. Oh, these people indulge in such food. How can they ever change? I had a very horrifying experience going to a doctor who was a vegan. No names, of course. And I had taken a very senior and elderly person from the ashram whom everybody respected and loved deeply. I didn't realize, to my horror, the person asked, "Do you take meat, non-veg food?" And the person said in all simplicity, "Yes." And this doctor threw her hands up and said, "How can I treat such a person? You only next life you can get treated," and things like that. And I had to really undo a lot of the damage. So that is a mental way of doing it. But when this peace descends and does it for us, then this attitude is not established. The whole nature becomes more and more plastic, and there is a deeper understanding. So it's very different from mental way of doing it, which Aurobindo repeatedly says. Not that mental way is bad. At our level, probably that is also necessary, but that is a very imperfect control. That is the fundamental rationale of the sadhana. It will be evident that the two most important things here are the opening of the heart center and the opening of the mind centers to all that is behind and above them. How difficult it is? Aurobindo says in a very small letter, he says, right above our head, there is an ocean of infinite existence, consciousness, peace, bliss, and we have only to call it. He talks it in reference to illnesses, that illnesses will get cured if we knew how to call it and establish it. The mother says in one of her small letters that if you can call down this peace and establish it into a part, you will be cured of the illness. But we doctors stand in the way. How can you cure illness without us? So this is the other side of the story. Anyways, that apart, it will be evident that these are the two openings required. Open to the higher consciousness and the nexus between the psychic being and the higher consciousness. What a beautiful nexus. Right now there is a nexus between the ego and the lower consciousness. And this nexus is very, very subtle and very complicated. But there is a new nexus, the nexus between the psychic being and the higher consciousness. Aurobindo has this very beautiful hymn to the Mother of Radiances. Most probably it is Aurobindo's, because people say that probably it may not be his. But nevertheless, it has all the force and power of his writing, that Aurobindo says that remove from me this lower network of forces. And he asks for a birth only in the higher consciousness, infinite existence, infinite consciousness. So Aurobindo tells us, the nexus between the psychic being and the higher consciousness is the principal means of the siddhi. That means the psychic is delivered out of the lower nature, and at any smallest pretext or all the time, it is constantly in communication with the higher consciousness. For the mind, it's an impossible task. If mind by itself tries to open, it leans toward this or that aspect and can easily get lost and confused. But if the psychic being is awakened and forms a nexus with the higher consciousness through a constant invocation, then sadhana becomes beautiful and easy, and the new creation descends more and more. The first opening is affected by a concentration in the heart, a call to the divine to manifest within us, and through the psychic to take up and lead the whole nature. So the first opening of the heart center is to the psychic. The second opening is effected by a concentration of the consciousness in the head, afterwards above it, and an aspiration and call, and a sustained will for the descent of the divine peace, power, light, knowledge, ananda into the being. So simple work Sri Aurobindo has given us to all the time ask and aspire for the divine peace, power, light, knowledge, ananda into the being. The peace first, or the peace and force together. Some indeed receive light first, or ananda first, or some sudden pouring down of knowledge. With some there is first an opening which reveals to them a vast infinite silence, force, light or bliss above them, and afterwards either they descend to that or these things begin to descend into the lower nature. So this is the process of the sadhana. We'll take on from here and continue further. That basically Sri Aurobindo is telling us that don't keep asking and enjoying this lower creation, and if we want the higher creation to be established, we have to want these higher things. And just as we today ask for all the multiple countless things of the lower creation, we must ask and aspire for light, force, peace, oneness, bliss, and all the infinity of the divine existence. So we'll meet next week.